All right, well, welcome to another tutorial where we'll be doing some photogrammetry work. We'll just do a quick photo scan of a nature asset. So I'm going to use just a log that I found in a forest. We'll take a look at that photo set in just a second here, but we will be using a program called Meshroom. You can just go ahead and Google that. A fantastic open source package for doing photo scans like this. So you can just head over to the download page and go ahead and grab the latest version. You can get that running in the background while we talk about the photo set. All right, so I can pull that up here. Like I said, just a simple object that I'm going to use here. Just this birch log. So anything with a fairly matte, non-reflective surface is going to work quite well for photogrammetry. And your lighting scenario, right? Like as you can see with this photo set, this was a fairly cloudy day. You're going to want to go for, an overcast, if at all possible, overcast outdoors lighting, nice even lighting from all angles here. And like not a lot of harsh lighting or hard lighting coming from any particular side of the object. In terms of how to decide how to take these photos, what I found worked fairly well is to start with a couple images around the top of the object. So you can see fairly high camera angle here. I'm almost looking directly down on top of the asset. Of course, we don't need as many photos from this angle because we can basically see like the most of the object from every angle. This is just to contextualize the main texture. That photo information for the texture itself, just get a nice view of that from the top. And then I got started on my first main kind of orbit around the object. So picked a camera angle, actually didn't do all that great of a job keeping my camera at the same level here. So and actually some of these photos are not the sharpest. I'm just doing this with my phone that's a couple years old, so not the highest quality images, but this asset it should scan quite nicely in Meshroom, so that'll give you an idea for the quality of photos that you need. Obviously, the sharper the photos, the better. Right, so this completes like one orbit all the way around the object at a certain camera angle, right? Certain high angle. And then I did a second orbit around the asset at this lower angle, almost looking like directly at the side of the asset. Again, going all the way around. All right, so let's see, I've got 49 photos here. So that should work quite well for this example. So you can aim for something similar to that. And yeah, so let's get this process started inside of Meshroom. Now I found that I have to run Meshroom as admin, otherwise it doesn't launch. So a bit strange, but just keep that in mind in case in case it's giving you some issues in trying to launch the program. All right, so inside of Meshroom, I'm going to go File, Import Images, and just go ahead and grab that photo set that I'm working with. And we'll get all those images in here. So I'll just select everything and open those 49 images. So those will all be ready to go. Now, for the most part, we are going to leave the settings for this photo scan as default. Quick little explanation as to what's going on with this set of nodes on the bottom here. I actually really like how Meshroom is set up. It is, as you can see, like set up as a node-based system where you can actually see all the individual steps that are taken in doing the photo scan. So everything from matching the images to preparing like a point cloud, like creating like a dense point cloud from the matches that were found between the images, depth mapping, and then creating an actual piece of geometry itself, or the meshing process, and then any filtering, and then finishing it off with the texturing process, where we actually get we're going to see actually a series of textures using UDIMs created for this asset. We'll have to do a bit of extra work in Maya in a few moments to get this get all those diffuse textures baked down to a single texture just for convenience. But yeah, so it's kind of neat because you can actually like right click on any of these nodes and compute up until that point in the this photogrammetry pipeline, in case you want to just test out your settings up until a certain point and you don't have to like do the whole process. So I really like how this is set up. But yeah, we're only going to change a few settings right at the end here, just to take care of the poly count of the final mesh. So what we're going to do here is we are going to right click just in empty space here and search for decimate, mesh decimate. So this node is not included here by default, but it allows us to specify max vertices of the final object. And I'm going to go with 100,000 polygons. That should give us a nice middle of the road solution. Not too many, not too few polygons. And let's just connect this in so that we, get this node integrated into the network here. So for some reason, we can't like connect stuff to a texturing node that already has an input here. So I found, strangely enough, we have to actually delete that. See, so mesh goes in there, and then we can create another texturing node. Bring that back. Now we will be able to connect output mesh to the mesh input. And then of course we can't forget the, I think this is maybe depth map related information. I'm not entirely sure, but we can just connect that to dense SFM data, right? That was one of the original inputs to the texturing node. So we just need to make sure we connect that one back in here. All right, so we got that decimate in there just to control the maximum number of vertices we're going to create here. And we'll also take a look at the texturing node here. I'm going to drop the texture size down to 2K, so 2048 by 2048 here. You can create a higher resolution texture if you like, but I'm just going to keep that fairly low and fairly contained, hopefully to reduce the amount of processing time we need to do for this quick example. And everything else we're going to leave as is. You can use the basic unwrapping method. Actually, as of the time of recording this video with Meshroom version 2021.1.0, I found that the other unwrapping methods, which actually apparently create a single texture and don't use UDIMs to texture the object, I could not get them to work for me. I was looking around for a solution, could not figure that one out. So we're going to do this the manual way. We're going to take the raw output here using UDIMs and just bake all the textures to a single albedo texture in Maya in just a few moments here. So we'll leave all those settings as is. Got our 2K texture size. And the only other thing you're going to want to keep an eye on here in your texturing node is just the output folder. You're going to find your final files here located in your app data under this file path here, right? So it's just kind of a randomly generated folder name. So we'll just keep an eye on that and go take a look for our files when this is done. All right, so that's all the setup we need to do. I'm going to go ahead and hit start. this, you can save your project if you want. I'm not going to hang on to this scene after we're done here, so it's up to you. But yeah, that will turn all of the nodes in this graph kind of this light blue, showing you that they're in progress. Green is completed. Orange is currently, the Meshroom is currently working on those nodes. And this is going to take a while, right? Even with a pretty beefy GPU. Actually, this is a GPU-based task. Let's see. Yeah, Meshroom is eating up about 10% of my GPU time at the moment. So it looks like primarily a GPU-based process. So even with, I'm running on a GeForce 3080 right now, and it is still going to take let's see, around 15 or 10, 15 minutes, I think, to do this based on my previous tests. So do be prepared to wait for a while. So we'll be back in just a second here through the magic of editing and continue the process just of doing some additional cleanup on this photo scan and getting the asset prepared for rendering. And with that scan completed, I mean, we can take a look at some of the internal data here that Meshroom was using to create the asset, right? Here's a look at the point cloud that it found, as well as, actually, this is kind of interesting, the camera positions that it derived from the photos that we used. But what we're mainly interested in here is the OBJ file and the textures that were created in this folder here. So in app data and in the Meshroom texturing output folder, looks like our folder begins with C29. So there it is. So we can see this set of UDIMs that were created here, really strange texture, components that were created here. It just has to do with how this basic UV mapping method works. I mean, it just uses a whole bunch of UDIMs. But yeah, there's the set of textures and the OBJ file that we will be importing into Maya to do some further processing work here. So let's launch Maya and get that OBJ imported in, and yeah, clean up that scan a little bit. We can see here, just by taking a look at the point cloud, that we are going to be having a whole bunch of geometry, representing this kind of these stone tiles or these concrete tiles, and some other background bits and pieces, stuff that we're going to want to eventually remove from the asset. So yeah, let's go ahead and get that asset imported in here. So I've got you can copy and paste this set of files wherever you like. The MTL file that goes along with the OBJ uses relative file paths, so it'll be able to find back the textures if you just keep them all in the same folder. But we want to import the OBJ, so let's go ahead and do that. All right, so we'll bring that OBJ in, and here it is at a very strange angle. So we're going to want to just do some transformations on this to get it positioned closer to origin here. I put it upside down, so let's do something like that. I'm just going to do some basic transformations here, get it as close to origin as I can. I'm going to go right away and just simplify this mesh. I'm just going to select what we want to keep, hold right click out in empty space here, invert that selection, and delete the rest. Looks like there was some additional geometry underneath here that accidentally got selected, so we can delete that as well. And with that ready to go, we can now do a modify center pivot, as well as a freeze transformations. Just to just to make this object a little bit easier to deal with. All right, so let's get this nicely positioned at origin here. Go to top view, make that orientation make sense. Check it from the side view. Looks good. Okay. All right, so one more freeze transformations there just to apply those changes. And let's get to work on some more optimization here for this mesh. All we're really going to do here is just get rid of this kind of remaining ground plane geometry. This is definitely not all the processing you can do on a scan to clean it up. You may very well want to fill in any holes, like where the real world object was actually sitting on the ground. We're not going to do that here just because of the process we're going to use to bake the UDIMs to a single texture. I mean, of course, we're not permitting ourselves to use any additional software here. You'd probably be using something like Substance Painter to really process this properly, which would make it very easy to just paint in any remaining texture details for the like extra geometry we create to fill in a hole like this. We don't have that liberty in this tutorial, so we're going to keep it fairly simple. I will leave some open areas, such as right underneath here where we can see this cavity. But it shouldn't really affect things, especially if we are just doing some test renders or even placing this log in a nature scene. We're not going to be seeing that area of the object at all, actually. So not a huge deal. So I'm going to start by just getting rid of as much of this ground plane geometry as I can. Then I'm going to have to zoom in here and make some finer adjustments. So now this area that is kind of connecting to the ground plane, we're going to have to fill in a small hole here. So this area will be untextured after we bake the textures, so that'll have to be filled in later. Let's go ahead and let's see here. Let's delete those. Select the edge loop and we'll do a fill hole. And after that, we'll triangulate it. And now the shading looks a little bit weird. I'm wondering if that is because it is using soft normals and everything else is using hard normals. So we can do a mesh display. Let's see, harden edge. Oh no, I think what it could be to do with the material assigned, because that didn't fix the problem. It could be to do with the materials that are assigned to the rest of the object as opposed to this new geometry we just created. Not going to be we're not going to be able to fix that problem really, even if we assigned another material or one of the existing materials created during the photoscan process. There will be no texture data available for those polygons, so we're going to have to fix that later on anyway. So I'll just do some more fine details here. Just want to get rid of any extra geometry we can. All right, looking pretty good. Let's just take a look and make sure there's no other really obvious mesh errors. That is a problem. Looks like a polygon that had kind of collapsed over on itself. I'll just move that vertex to fix that problem. Take a quick look at the rest of it here. Anything going on here? No, those are just fairly, yeah, that's fine. Looks like another collapsed polygon here. So let's try to just quickly fix that. And one more up at the top here. All right, good enough. Good enough for the example. Okay, so here is the kind of the raw asset. We're not going to do any more decimation on this. Again, we set our poly count to 100,000 polys inside of Meshroom. So that limited things nicely. This poly count isn't ridiculous. It's, you know, enough to keep the shape of the object, and it'll look good from a a reasonable distance. So that's good. Let's just see how this object is currently set up. I'll delete my construction history there, and just take a look at the attribute editor. So again, remember that we were working with a series of textures, many textures, right? So these are set up as UDIMs, and we can see actually that there are multiple texture nodes, or multiple material nodes, I should say, connected to this geometry. They are all Phong shaders. Right, so we've got, I believe, a one material node per texture. For some reason, it is set up that way. You can actually take a look in the UV editor here and actually see those UDIMs, or the UDIM tiles that are used for each image. All right, so quite a few tiles in use. This is a 0 to 1 space down here. That there's only a single texture visible on that area of UV space, and the rest of the geometry is all spread out to other UDIM tiles. Of course, what we're going to want here is just all the relevant texturing information for the log itself baked down to a single UV texture, just a single square texture in the 0 to 1 space. So now these lines you see here, this is caused by those these polygons that we just created. Shouldn't pose much of an issue for baking to a new copy of this object that we're going to create in just a second. But that's a little explanation as to why you see those strange looking edges there. That would not happen if we didn't create any geometry. So I think this will be fine. If not, we'll have to go back and fix that. All right, so let's go back here to our classic view. And what we're going to need to do is, in order to bake the textures and basically create a new albedo map for our asset here, we're actually going to need a duplicate of this object, like I just said, and we're going to need to UV map that object such that all the UVs are in the 0 to 1 space, right? We just saw that the UVs are currently all over the place. They are all on different UDIM tiles. We don't want that. We want everything on the 0 to 1 space. So I am going to rename this current object the source geometry. I'm going to do a Control D so we get a duplicate of that object. This will be called target geometry. And just for simplicity, I'm going to hide the source just so we don't get it confused with the target. And we can head back to our UV editing workspace. And all I am going to do here is just a quick automatic map on this. You should go through, mark all, and do some cuts, UV map this nicely. But for speed, because this isn't a UV mapping tutorial, for speed, I'm just going to do an automatic map and get everything in the 0 to 1 space. All right, so this is what our resulting UV layout should look like. and we'll go with that. Again, this is just an example to show the process. You can look at a UV mapping tutorial if you need to brush up on that a little bit. Okay, so that process, getting your UVs of the target geometry all in the 0 to 1 space is very, very, very important. Otherwise, the baking process will not work properly. So we'll head back over to the lighting shading menu, bring up our transfer maps. And so just to show you what we're after here, we are after, I'll just remove all of those. We are after the diffuse color map here. So this is the map we're gonna bake, right? Previously in this course, we baked normals, but we are actually just gonna bake diffuse color information here, okay? And yeah, we'll have to do a bit of setup here in just a second, but first things, actually, you know what? Let's do this the wrong way first, because there's another setting here. There is something to do with how the Phong shaders are set up with this ambient color attribute. I actually want to show the problem that the ambient color attribute causes. First, I want to show the problem so that in case you run into this problem or forget this step when you're doing your diffuse bakes, you know what to solve. All right, so let's go ahead and just pick a folder to put this in, this final image in. All right, I'm going to go to my final folder for my my photo scan here. I'm going to call this texture just albedo. It'll be a PNG image. You can save that. Let's set our target and source meshes. We can start by clearing everything. Right, so target gets added to the target mesh. Source gets added to the source mesh. And we should be good to go here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit that bake button, and let's take a look at the results. So it actually shouldn't take too long to complete here. We can load that baked texture up, right? So first things first, we can see what we've accomplished by doing this. Instead of having, bits and pieces of the log texture kind of scattered throughout various UDIMs, we've actually baked this all down to a single texture, and this will be good to work with. But there is a problem here, right? So if you take a look at maybe some particularly bright areas like the top of the log, you can see how it is all washed out like this. It's all overexposed and looking real nasty. This is coming from, like I said, this ambient color material attribute that is automatically set on the material information stored with this OBJ file. It's really annoying, and we need to we basically need to take all of the material nodes and set their ambient color to just black. That would take quite a while to do if we went one by one through all of these materials. In fact, let's go to rendering editors, let's go to Hypershade, and let's look at the fact that we have all these material nodes. That would be really annoying to do one at a time. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shift select each one here. And we are going to use the attribute spreadsheet, real handy tool inside of Maya to edit multiple attributes at the same time. So with all those nodes selected, I'm going to go Windows General Editors, Attribute Spreadsheet, expand this window, and right, so each row that we can see on this spreadsheet here represents one of the material nodes, and we can see all their attributes listed here in this nice convenient format where we can actually click and drag to select multiple values to edit. So we're looking for ambient color R, G, and B. I'm going to left click and drag over those 3 columns. I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom. Make sure you get everything, all 3 columns, all the rows. And I'm just going to type a big 0 into that to set all of the ambient color, right? We can actually check now. And actually check if we just go through individual material nodes here, we can see that the ambient color is all set to black now. Okay, so that will fix that kind of overexposed shading issue. I'm going to overwrite my albedo texture here. So I can hit bake again. And once that is finished baking, we should see the that overexposed issue being dealt with. There we go. Now this is a fairly low resolution image. Remember, we only baked a 2K textures when we were just baking this in Meshroom. So if you want a really high quality, high resolution texture, you're probably going to want to go a lot higher than that, and then bake everything down perhaps to a single UV texture. So yes, fairly low res, but the most important part here is that we have dealt with that really nasty overexposure issue. So there we go. That is how to deal with that. And yeah, let's go ahead, add. Well, actually, we can get rid of our source geometry now. That was the geometry with the UDIMs as a UV layout. We're left with our target geometry, right? The version with the correct UV layout. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just assign a new material to this. We're rendering an Arnold, so I'll use an AI standard surface. And this is going to go ahead and just assign that material to everything on this object, whereas previously we actually had different materials applied to, like actually multiple materials applied to the object. So now we only have a single, once I clear my construction history, a single material node applied to the object. Good to go. Let's go ahead, throw a file node on that base color, or in other words, our albedo color input. And I'm going to go ahead here and just select that albedo texture that we just baked. All right, so we can bring that in. We leave the color space as sRGB because it is an sRGB image. And well, we can actually preview the textured version of this by hitting 6 on the keyboard, right? So just shaded and 6 is texture preview. So we can actually preview that and see that log is starting to look pretty good. All right, so there it is. You know what? Let's actually bring in an image-based light just so we get some nice lighting information to work with here, and take a look at just pulling a quick render here. So I'm going to add an Arnold Sky Dome light, and for my color, I'll bring in, let's see here. I'll bring in one of the IBLs we created in the last tutorial. So let's see, let's bring in, how about that, kind of that studio IBL that we generated from the 3D scene. All right, so bring that one in here. Just a nice little test scenario. All right. Can also create a ground plane just so we have something to cast a shadow onto. And we can take a test render. I'll go with the Arnold live render. All right, so for starters here, our log is very shiny indeed. So I'm going to increase the roughness just to get that a bit more realistic looking. And yeah, there we go. I think we're also seeing the hard normals being rendered for this object. Is that true? Yeah, I think we're seeing hard normals here, just some of the artifacts on the surface of the object. So I am going to do a mesh display soften edge, just to soften all the normals. And there we go. So there's a really, really basic photogrammetry workflow for assets using Meshroom and Maya, and actually no other software, right? Getting that diffuse bake, if you need to bake all your diffuse textures to a single UV texture, you can actually do that all just inside of Maya. All right, so yeah, that's it for this tutorial. Good luck with creating some photogrammetry assets. And yeah, hopefully you can use this to end up with something really cool and some cool assets to use in your scenes.